as a family, you worry about what happens to them when you're gone, who's going to help them and who's going to take care of them. And this has just given us a lot more confidence and hope in his ability to solve problems for himself in the future.
G'day, I'm Debra Caldow. Welcome to the Red Giraffe Solutions Expanding Worlds podcast, where we aim to support you as you help your young person with additional needs plan for their future, a future where they're safe, secure, and live a rewarding and fulfilling life. From around the world, I share stories and I share solutions from people making this possible right now. I'm a parent of a young person with additional needs, so I understand the challenges. Many of the people I've interviewed on this podcast have already helped me design a better future for my daughter, and I hope that they might help you as well to imagine what's possible for your young person. We often talk about the journey we're on with our children. When they're young, this is often in the context of the progress that they're making, because childhood seems to be built on a series of progression points. But as our children get older, this journey idea starts to change. In part, I guess, because we realise that we won't always be around for every step on their journey. And also because at certain points in their journey, we can see that things seem to come to a stop. Not because they're not necessarily moving forward as individuals, but because there are these transition points that feel less about moving forward and more like jumping off that proverbial cliff edge. And the reason I'm saying this is because in this week's episode, which is the second part of my conversation with Dave Friedman from AutonomyWorks, he said something that really resonated with me around this idea that we all need to be looking forward, and that often for our young people, they'll get to a point in their lives where there will be no more opportunities for looking forward. Of course, Dave talks about other things in this episode as well, including what he thinks needs to change around the world of work, and also a little bit about AI, in part because I think that's something we all probably need to think about in terms of what our children's work futures might look like. So enough from me, let's hear more from Dave. What things need to change?
I think two things need to change. The first is I think companies need to rethink talent. Companies really need to start thinking about people based on what they're capable of and not what's difficult for them, and matching people's talents to business needs. I think that's the big thing that we do is, we start with people's talents and match that to work. And then we figure out how to support the things that are challenging for them. And I think that kind of mentality needs to change. Now, thinking that the mentality of the corporate world is going to change, like that's a big lift. But the thing that I think that social service agencies and people with kids with disabilities can do is I think to take a little bit of a longer view of the path to success and have more patience with kids as they learn and grow over time. Because that's one of the things we see. I've certainly seen it in Matt, but we see it in our employees all the time that, they might start with us and things might be very difficult for them, but over time they build skills and get better and better over time. So having some more patience for how people grow, I think would really make a difference in terms of for parents, for social service agencies, and frankly, for people with disabilities themselves to sort of have a little more patience with themselves as they build skills and grow over time.
Is that because the expectations of the way that we mature is set in stone almost, and the way we have to move through life?
There's such a set of expectations that at this age, you're doing this, at this next age, you're doing that, at this next age. And I think that's great for the people for whom it's great, but it's not great for everybody. And so I think opening our eyes to other models of growth would help us see the successes of people. I mean, one of the big things with Matt growing up, and when you have a kid with a disability, you can get kind of stuck in the disability some days, and it can get pretty discouraging, where it feels like they're really struggling and you're struggling. But, what my wife and I really learned to do in those times was to look back like 5 years and say, what's he doing now that he wasn't doing 5 years ago? And like a whole bunch of things, like he was always growing. And so, okay, over the last 5 years, he's learned how to do all these different things. So there's every reason to expect in the next 5 years, he's going to learn to do a whole bunch of new things. And so that really helped us. And I think if people had a little bit more of that mentality that like, hey, every path is different, But as long as you're making progress on your path, I think that's a huge mental shift that can really help support and grow people.
What do you think the impact of things like AI will have on your business?
AI is a big issue. So I'll give you two answers to that. The first is the negative answer, which is it's scary because a lot of the work we do could be substantively done by AIs. And I think there's a real risk to our business from AI. And we're working really hard to understand that and figure out what to do. But on my best days, I actually I find it has maybe a lot of potential. AI is going to force us to need to rethink how jobs are structured. We're going to need to rethink how work gets done. I've talked a couple of times about how work isn't well designed for people with disabilities. But if we're going to rethink the way work is done, then we have an opportunity perhaps to rethink work in a way that it creates jobs for people with disabilities. We're looking at a lot now is when you automate a process, generally what happens is you automate 80% of it, but there's still 20% of it that needs to be done. There are special cases, there are unique situations, there are things that need approval, there are things that just break on the model. And then the model makes things up. So you have to check the model, make sure that it's accurate, make sure it's doing the right things. And so there's still a need for a human, what they call a human in the loop with AI. So AI might do 80% of the work. There's still a need for a human in the loop. And we think that people with autism are really well suited for that job because if you're going to be the human in the loop, you need to understand the process really well. You need to understand all the details and all of the special cases. You need to have the attention to detail to pay attention to what's coming through every single day. And you have to have kind of the focus or the passion to do that for a long time. Like it's really hard to train someone to do that. So that's what people with autism are really good at. The same energy that people with autism might put into Dungeons and Dragons or dinosaurs or whatever when they're kids, they will put into what they do at work. And so they can learn it really well. Our turnover is 3 or 4%. So you have very low turnover. So we think there's a place for people with autism to be that human in the loop for AI going forward. So we're hoping that as work gets restructured, as people open their minds to neurodiversity and autism in particular, they start to look for these new roles. So if people are going to start looking at jobs and rethinking them, let's try to get them to rethink them so that they are suitable for people with disabilities.
Can I ask you a question as a dad? What kind of impact has that had on him, on the family, him having a job?
It's really transformational. I described a little bit earlier about his high school experience. He had a really good experience in high school, very positive set of relationships built there. And then here, the schools were responsible for supporting kids until they turned 22 years old. And so he went to what's called the transition program after high school, also a very good experience. And then they hit, the cliff where they moved from services provided by the schools to adult services. And there are just many, many fewer services and many, many fewer supports. And what ends up happening in a lot of cases is when people go over that cliff, they end up sort of looking backwards in their lives, like, hey, high school was great and this was great and so forth. But what having a job has done for Matt has sort of swung his view to looking forward instead of looking backwards. So he, for example, learned how to take public transportation so that he could get to work on his own. He started going to the local community college so that he could take classes that would help him get more hours and more money at AutonomyWorks. He started talking about living independently and things like that are all very future oriented, very much about what he wants his life to be in the future, not what his life was in the past. That's just sort of a transformational change in someone's life when they start to think about the future and about having the agency, if you will, to shape the future of their life. That's a tremendously empowering thing. And when you start to feel like you have the ability to be successful, then you can do all sorts of things. So for him, it's given him an identity and confidence in what he can accomplish. As a family, I think this is true of any family that has kids with disabilities. Like you worry about what happens to them when you're gone and who's going to help them and who's going to take care of them. And this has just given us a lot more confidence and hope in his ability to solve problems for himself in the future and the possibility that he'll live as independently as possible. and much more independently than I might have thought, when he was, 10 years ago when he was 20 years old. I attribute a lot of that to the job and the confidence and the accountability that has built for him. So there's still a lot of, work to be done. People need to be seen, and they need to be seen as individuals that contribute, and then they need to just blend into the world of people who are individuals and contribute.
I couldn't agree more about the impact that having a job can have on a young person and on their family. It's been the same for my daughter and for us. Like Dave said, it encourages new skills. But most importantly, it is about looking towards the future. Having our children actively look forward to their futures certainly helps us to fear less what that future might look like. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope that the stories and solutions shared on here help you as you support your young person to create their future. If you know anyone who would find the ideas useful, please share the podcast with them. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn at Debra Caldow. I'd love to have a conversation with you on any of the topics we all care about. Bye for now.